Okay, I've never started off like a narrative before without rehearsing. So here we go. Hi everyone. I'm Elijah. Hi Elijah. I'm a guy. I'm 25 years old. I work for a living and I get it done. You know, in the words of Polly and what have you. I do not like talking about work. Never been a big work guy. At least in terms of talking about it. I think that probably started 4 years ago. So when I was 21 years old, I graduated college from George Fox University in Newberg, Oregon, with a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics. When I was searching for jobs and such, I really had no clue what I was looking for. I wanted something in the data analytics or IT department area, but I realized that I really hadn't spent my 3 years of college building up skills in those areas. And so I felt like almost any job that I was interested in was a long shot. And to kind of enforce that in my head, or I guess reinforce that, applying for jobs did not go well in my senior year. I think there was about 30 some odd data analytics jobs that I applied for, which it's not that many, but it was a good number. And through all of those, I don't think I got one single callback. Nobody was even reading the resumes I was sending. I got nothing. And so I decided I'd just broaden my search to basically any job that sounded remotely interesting to me and just see who would get back to me. And on the day after I graduated, someone finally got back to me, and that was Epic Systems. When Epic reached out to me, I didn't know anything about what they were all about or anything like that. So I just did some preliminary research, and I found out that they were a pretty big time company. They rake in the bacon for sure. They make billions of dollars a year. They have about 13,000 employees at the time that I started. They have offices in several countries, and they were only really getting bigger. So if I wanted to pursue a career in tech, this was a pretty good launching point. But my goal was to go there for several years and kind of figure out what I wanted to do after that. I remember before I started working at Epic, they invited me out to Wisconsin to do a tour of the campus. And their campus is something else, as you'll hopefully see throughout this film with some of the shots. And while I was on the tour, I asked the tour guide, this campus is epic, for lack of a better word. Does the charm of being here ever wear out? And he said, yeah, after a while it gets to be the same old thing, but you're interest in the company will shift to other things as you become a more enfranchised employee. So, on my first day at Epic, I remember there was like this platform they had online where you could like talk to like other new hires, and I used that over the summer to connect with like a couple of people. And one of the guys that I had been messaging, I just so happened to like find him randomly on like the first day. So I went up to him and I was like, hey dude, it's Elijah. You know, we talked online like over the summer. And he was like, you know, he gave me a look like, who the hell are you? But he said like, oh yeah, like I remember. But I don't know if he remembered. But it just so happened that him and I were like on the very same team doing the very same job. And we ended up becoming friends later on. His name is Wyeth. He's a pretty cool guy. On my first day, I also met the person that I shared my office with. Her name is Ashley, and she was one of my best friends for a good long while. And I also did these pretty goofy like orientation-like things, and these people from HR, like these big dogs of the company, like gave us all this, and they were like, you know, you got to do this and this, and make sure you sign this, and let us know this, and like make sure you do this by the end of the day. And I was like, who the hell cares? Like, I work at a cool company now. And it was pretty tight. It was a pretty cool first day, I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty stoked to be here.
Get comfy here. Yo, this is so cool. Oh, it's a kaleidoscope. That's so cool. We're gonna get a shot of the kaleidoscope after this. It's cool.
So after like 2 months or something, maybe not even that, like after like a month or so of working at Epic, they take all the new hires into this huge auditorium, and there's like 1,000 people, and the CEO is sitting in front of you, and all these other top company executives are sitting in front of you. The big people, the big dogs, they kind of just preach, okay? They're telling you, you know, here's the laws of the land. You work here now, but you do it because you're going to be really good at doing exactly what I want the way I want it. And I don't remember very much. I remember doing my absolute darndest to tune this out because there was this proverbial Kool-Aid that I was determined to not drink. And this was like the class where they force feed it to you. And so I was like, all right, let me just, you know, distance myself from everything that's happening here. So I remember I was like drawing pictures and ignoring the class for the most part. The one thing about corporate philosophy that I do actually remember vividly is one of my colleagues, Anthony. He, you know, there was like a Q&A right at the end of this class where you could just ask the CEO of the company anything you wanted. All right? Bow before this billionaire and, you know, let her wield her knowledge, right? So this colleague of mine, Anthony, he goes up to the mic very bravely and he goes, I don't exactly remember what he said, so I'm paraphrasing here. But I feel like he said something along the lines of like, hey, one of my big takeaways from today is just like, hey, like go out and like be bold while you're working here and like don't be afraid to fail. And the CEO, Judy, she just goes, well,
a bad takeaway because you should fail. You shouldn't fail. And he was like, oh. And then everyone laughed, and poor Anthony just went back to his seat. This is not exactly how it went, but that is the takeaway that I had from that event.
So about the 4-month mark is where I started to face my first, quote, adversity with the company. Everything had been smooth sailing. It had just been all training, just make friends, figure out what you're doing here, like learn about your responsibilities, do all these training tasks. And it came pretty easy for me. But around 4 months in, I got really stuck on this exam. So there was this deficiency tracking exam, which was like just the name for a system on the application I supported. And I had to get like an 85% on it to pass. Like you get 3 attempts. They said that you get 3 attempts. So I was like, all right, 3 attempts it is. I'll pass it flying colors. I only need 1. I'm good. Right? So on the first exam, I think I get like an 82. And I'm like, damn, like I was so close. I'll just study a little bit more. I'll go retake it tomorrow or something. Second attempt, I get a 79 or something like that. And I was like, dang, I did worse. And that was really frustrating. And that wasn't the bad part, really. But I was like, okay, now the pressure's on because I only get 1 more shot at this test. And I don't know what happens if I fail it again. I'm just not going to go there. So I studied really hard. I talked to a bunch of people on my team, made sure I would get every question right on the next exam. I take it, 82 again. Failed again. And I'm out of chances. So I'm like, I wonder if I'll get in trouble. But I also was thinking like, hey, I've been doing really good on all my other stuff. I worked really hard on this. I was close on it all 3 times. I'll just talk to my manager about it and, we'll be good. But before I could say anything about it to my manager, she actually brought it to me and said that this is not acceptable and you need to figure out a plan to make sure this doesn't happen again. And your next exam, you have to pass. And didn't really elaborate. So I didn't really know what the consequences were going to be if I failed again. I was not really picturing that I would, but I was like, if I fail a 4th time, are they going to fire me? This is for me, this didn't mean a lot. It's just a silly test, right? But then my manager was putting the pressure on. And I ended up taking the exam again and I passed. I got a 90 or something. But I remember that from that moment forward, basically the pressure never really came off. So in my role at Epic, I was what's called a technical solutions engineer. So really what I was doing is customer support. A bunch of hospitals, etc., buy Epic, and they have analysts who are experts in one application on Epic, or one application area, or one knowledge area of Epic. And then they have people like me who basically just assist the analysts when they're not able to figure something out in the system. And so for the first 4 or so months, I didn't really have any customers I was working with. But in the next 2 months, I think I added 3.
And so very quickly, agreeable 40 hour per week work week became pretty much a lot more than that. It was probably around the 45 to 50 hour mark. And it was fine. For me, I was thinking, I can, oh man, something fell over. I was thinking, I can stomach this. Once I kind of figure out what I'm doing here, once I kind of learn the ropes, it won't be like this anymore. I'll go back to 40 hours. I was filming outside and I got looked out because I don't have a badge to get in anymore. So I have to go actually do like a 15-minute walk to go find this like secret entrance. And there's like a winter storm happening right now. And the ground is like ice. And there's like 20 mile per hour, 25 mile per hour, 30 mile per hour gusts. So it just blows me along the ice. And it's like 25 degrees. So hopefully when I go back and find my secret entrance again, I will still be alive. Holy cow, dude. I don't know if you can hear the wind. I don't know if you can hear me over the wind. Holy cow. My camera's gonna die soon. So somewhere around the 8 month mark of working at Epic, they had this big convention where they invite all these like app experts from the customers that like implemented their software, and they have just like a bunch of talks about like upcoming features and pain point areas and things that customers are doing that's really clever, etc. And so they make sure that like during this convention, all the employees are dressed a little better, and they called this dress code business neat. And I read over the code and I came up with an outfit of a nice flannel that I had. It wasn't even a flannel. It was like a dress shirt that had plaid on it and khakis. So I came to work wearing that, and I felt good. I felt, excited for this convention. I thought I had dressed like the part, and I was ready to meet some people. And then the first person I saw that day said, we're supposed to dress business neat. Like, we're supposed to dress up right. And I said, yeah, this is business neat. He said, nah. And he said, you should probably go home and change. I'm not going to make you go home and change, but you should probably go home and change. And so I did, but I was fuming.
what was supposed to be like something I was like excited for had become something that I was pissed about because, you know, I never really understood the whole like fashion need to begin with. And then I thought I had kind of, you know, gotten myself up to expectations. I feel like they were caught up in like we don't want to like make too many rules and force people to do things just this exact way. But if they had just said how to do it, it just made a system that made sense and wasn't like up for interpretation, then I would have got it right the first time. But instead, it was a really frustrating ordeal where I made yet another mistake. So around the 10 months mark, I think that's about the time where I would say I really started to struggle. I really wasn't on top of my work for like any of my customers. I was being sent on trips and pulled into escalations constantly. And I really just didn't have what it took to keep up. I was asking for help frequently, but getting less and less of the support that I needed. And my manager was absolutely useless in that area. She would present me with lots of feedback, but no action items or no real system of measurement. So I really couldn't tell if I was like making progress or regressing or what to do. So at this point, I was typically working probably 50 to 55 hours a week. And that was just barely to stay afloat. And at that point, that's when my mental health started to take a dive because I had less time for things like self-care and really just reflecting and resting. So I could only take so many of these long weeks before my performance started to dip even further. And I kind of knew that I wasn't in good standing with my manager because we had been bickering and going back and forth and not really reaching an agreement over what to do next. And around 11 months in, I sent an email to my manager requesting a few days off in the next couple months to go see my family. And my manager ignored my email, which was unusual because I don't think she ignored a single thing that I did for like the past 4 months prior to that. I considered, you know, pressing the issue by confronting her about it face to face, but I knew what it meant for her to not respond to that. It meant, no, you can't have that time off. And the only feasible reason that I could think of was that I was not going to be around at the time that I had requested off. And so it was about that time that I realized I was going to get fired. Milk is free to all guests, so I'm not stealing from anyone or from the company. So around the 1 year mark of my tenure, the wheels have completely fallen off. I'm constantly being dragged into hours-long, aimless, directionless, ad hoc calls to solve system-wide issues that no one really understands, and I definitely don't understand. And the best that I can do is just try to be present and try to pull in resources that can actually help. Because half the time it wasn't even my application. I was just getting pulled into everything. And I was completely miserable. I was working easily 60 plus hours every week. And so what I would do is I would eat breakfast in the morning, I would come to work, I'd work for 8 or 9 hours, I would go home, I would eat dinner, I would work for 3 hours, and then I would go to bed. So my entire day was work and take care of my basic needs for 5 days a week. And it was exhausting and it was frustrating, and I started to go nuts because I was losing my identity. I was told by my manager that I would have an upcoming appointment to talk about my exit plan, which basically meant we can choose when you're going to quit, like, you'll put in your notice, or we can fire you. So I asked, what's the difference? And they said, well, if we fire you, then when anyone calls us to ask about, how was Elijah as a team player, we'll tell them a bunch of shit. And we'll make it pretty hard for you to get an interview or a call back there. And then if you choose to leave, then we'll just not do that. We'll just tell them the good stuff. At the time, I felt threatened by that, but I think it is actually a pretty standard way to let someone go. But either way, I knew that the end was imminent, and I was pretty crestfallen about that. Looking back on it, I don't understand why I was so determined to not leave. I was very clearly not happy. Things were not working out. I never really felt supported or valued as a teammate, basically the entire time I worked here. But really, I think what it was is I was just stubborn, and I just wanted to keep believing that I could do anything. When things started to fall apart here, the reality sank in that I can't do anything. I can try anything, but I might not be successful at everything. And this is just one of those things I wasn't going to succeed at. So, about a month after I got that meeting, I put in my notice to leave Epic. Like a few days after I put in my notice, I had by far the worst week of work that I have ever had at anything, ever. There was 2 customers from Epic. One was called Temple Health. I was working with them. And one was called Tower Health. And Tower Health had this location called Chestnut Hill. They just sold the location to Temple Health. And then Temple was now going to care for the patients that attended the Chestnut Hill clinic. What we were in charge of doing is basically figuring out what patients count as Chestnut Hill patients and then loading those into Temple Health's system. And the way we went about the first part, figuring out who was a Chestnut Hill patient, was super jank. And I wasn't privy to it. We kind of, as Epic, as I say we, Epic,
the company, kind of took ownership of like choosing the patients, because both of the customers involved were completely not willing to participate in that, which was both shocking and detrimental to the project. And we should have not allowed that to happen. But anyway, I'm getting too into the weeds of what we were doing. All I did was load the patients. I loaded the patients that were chosen. I loaded them into Temple. After I loaded them into Temple, a bunch of other applications like loaded data on top of the patients that I created. And then the project was done. A couple of days after we finished our conversions, we got a call from the CEO of Tower Health. He said, last night my wife got a message on her MyChart saying, welcome to Temple Health. What the f, guys? The first thing that Tower decided to let Epic know was that they were gonna, step one, go to their lawyers and, basically sue us or send us a letter or some type of notice that basically says like, we're gonna sue you. And then the second thing they were gonna do is get the story media attention. This got escalated immediately to every executive at Tower Health and every executive at Temple Health and everyone on the project, and also several major players at Epic. I wasn't in those conversations. I wasn't responsible for like talking people off of the cliff. There were some people that get paid a lot more than I ever will, that know a lot more than I ever did, that took care of all that stuff. And Epic did not get sued, and the story did not get media attention. But I was stuck in a room with a bunch of other guys trying to figure out how to re-scope our project on the fly. And then all I really had to do is just be there to load the patients. I just had to load the patient data, but I got roped in to help with everything else, the whole escalation. For some reason. That was a week or so, about 4 days I think, of like 12-hour days, in-person days, extremely tired. And I was so thankful that I had put in my notice already, because if I hadn't, I would have been like, get me out of here as soon as possible. I would have quit right then and there.
So on my last day of Epic, it was really uneventful. I remember pretty early in the morning, my friend and the guy who'd been my mentor, Josh, kind of came in my office and he said, "It was nice working with you and I'll miss you, man." And that meant a lot to me. I remember around 2 p.m. I got a call from someone and they just said like, "Hey, we need you to do this thing, blah, blah, blah. Can you do it by the end of the day?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "By the way, thank you. Like on your last day, I know certainly not everyone would do this." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you got it, man." And I did the thing, and then it was like 3:30 when I was done. And I was like, I better leave before they find something else for me to do. So I said goodbye to Ashley, my office partner, and I walked down the stairs and I got in my car and I drove away. I've been fairly negative overall in my description of my time here. Of course, at the end of the day, I do not miss working here. I wanted to share the experiences that I remember most vividly, and I don't even remember them very much anymore because I kind of blocked a lot of this time out of my memory in general, but these were like kind of the experiences that shaped how I feel when I reflect on my time working here. And so these are the experiences that I felt like I wanted to share. It wasn't all bad. There were certainly really fun days working here, really fun things that happened here, and things I miss. So I want to talk about some of the things that I miss about working here. The number one thing, I'm just gonna be honest, the number one thing I miss about working here is the food. We were just in the cafeteria. It's called King's Cross. This is like the place that I visited every single day for lunch. Holy, they do not miss when it comes to food. I was loading my plate up every day with pierogies, with vodka sauce, with minestrone soup. I don't even know what those are, but oh my God, they're delicious. And everything that I ever got here was like so good, and I would eat so much. I was eating the best I ever ate in my whole career while I was here. And I remember like one day after lunch, a friend of me and Ashley's came by our office, and she was like, "Hey, have you guys grabbed lunch yet?" And I unleashed like the most tremendous burp that has ever come out of my system. And she just kind of like opens her eyes really wide and gets a little embarrassed, and she says, "No further questions," and just walks away. I think it was pretty obvious I'd already eaten. I miss certain colleagues. It's really nice, to be best friends with some of the people that you work with, and those people I definitely miss. I miss having an office. Living in Cubeland now at my current job is fine, but you don't get a lot of privacy, and it's nice to just be able to shut the door and just take a personal call. It's nice to just have a space that's yours. So I do miss offices a little bit. Epic also made finding my next job like so much easier. So I was talking at the beginning about how challenging it was to get an interview or any type of interest from any employer while I was searching for jobs during my last year of school. I looked for jobs in the area of like where I live now. Like I just all I had to say was, "Yeah, you worked at Epic for a little bit," and they were interested already. And that is a really solid opportunity that I give credit to Epic for. I want to do my final reflections here. Personally, after having some time to reflect, I feel like the company made the right decision when they chose to let me go. I don't understand why I wasn't meeting expectations, but nonetheless, that's how they felt, and it was the right choice to make that move. I don't take it personally. At the time, I did a little bit. I felt like people were kind of out to get me, and I had a lot of feedback from a lot of people that felt personal, and to some degree it might have been. But at the end of the day, I agree that I was not fitting in here. The way I feel now is I should have left sooner on my own terms, because it was pretty obvious about 6 months in that I don't like where this is going, and I don't like what I'm doing here. Working unpaid overtime to just get by, it's really soul-sucking to just donate your time to a mega corporation. I really should have just been honest with myself and started to look for other work around that time. But I wanted to stick it out. I came in with a plan to be here for 5 years, and I was going to try and do that, and it is what it is. I think that the number one thing that kept me from leaving was I didn't want to see myself as a quitter. And I feel like now, like looking back, like that's crap. That doesn't matter. I obviously worked really hard, and I was not intending to quit. But if something is just not meant to be, it's okay to just leave it behind. Right now, I'm so much happier than I ever was at Epic. I'm so in tune with who I am, with my identity again,
I've learned a lot about professional life. I've got plenty of time to just reflect and rest. And I'm happy. I'm a happy guy. I'm a pumped up, I'm super rad. I'm feeling great.